Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Nerds and Jesus podcast. Welcome, my name is Mary Howell. I'm a Christian and a worship leader who happens to also be a huge nerd according to myself, all my friends, family, and coworkers. And recently I've been wanting to discuss how Christian nerds are to navigate living in the secular world, how we are to be a light in the darkness while also nerding out on all types of fandoms pop culture has to offer. Today we will be reviewing the latest Dungeons and Dragons film and also talk about the nerdy news of the week. But I am not on this podcast alone, as I am joined this week by coworker, anime nerd, D&D nerd, and student director at his church, Jord'n Bay. We're also joined by my bestie, D&D nerd, and also pretty much the best person to go run errands with, Dezerae. Both also are ginger. So Des and Jord'n, how's it going?
It's going good.
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the D&D movie. But before that, just so that listeners just get to know a little bit about y'all, question is, and I'm asking pretty much everyone on the pod, besides I forgot to ask JT on the first one, but it's fine. I'm going to have him back and I'll ask him then. How long have y'all been a Christian? And you're welcome to share just a little bit of your story. Like, I know last guest probably was like a 30 second, like a minute, or whatever, just a short version of it.
Cool. Yeah. I'm Jord'n. I'll go first. 30-second version. I grew up, I would say, like in a Christian cultured home. So a lot of my family, I went to a Christian school, but I never went to church. And just the depravity of myself, just ended up recognizing just how terrible of a person I could be, very selfish, which led to depression, anxiety, all those lovely things when that all came to a head. When I was 16, and something big happened in my life. Could go on forever about it, but something big happened, and in that moment I was like, I need to give myself to Jesus. So around 17 is when I realized it was Jesus that saved my life, and I've been following him ever since. So 10 years now.
Nice.
Hi, my name is Dezerae. Most people call me Des. So I think around 2008 was when I ended up giving my life to the Lord. I had a very close encounter with God. I grew up in a church. My grandfather was pastor, also Marine, tough, strict childhood, things like that. But also grew up with a rough childhood, starting out. And so I chose to live with my grandparents, but I actually didn't follow the faith. I went to church because it was the South and it made my grandparents look good, I felt like. So I just went just to support them. And it took a few years, and then it took one of my really good friends dying in a car accident and then having a moment with God at his wake that I realized that God is real and that he wants me to have a relationship with him. And so I ended up giving my life to the Lord right there. And it took a few years because, baby Christian, went to college a couple of years after that. And so didn't have any like community or anything like that to keep me accountable or uplifting. And then I met Mary, in 2012. And, got rebaptized officially. And yeah, it's just been a very strong, steady relationship with the Lord ever since. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. And I guess part 2 of that question is, how big of a nerd are you? And so if you can choose your top fandom or games, that is your niche. Like, this is what you can talk about like all day long. It could be more than one. What would this be?
Oh my gosh. Oh, there's too many to count. Like,
obviously, you're on the D&D part of it, so.
Yeah, when you asked Joe and Micah this, I was like, she's probably going to ask me this, so I'm like, what are my top 3? So I've been thinking about it. If I had to pick 3, you already said 2, D&D and anime. I'm huge in those, love those, kind of grew up on those. But another one, grew up on anime. The other one that I grew up on, which would be my 3rd, is Star Wars. Anything Star Wars, I can talk about Star Wars all day long. My best friend since 2nd grade, we have been best friends because the first thing that he said in 2nd grade class when he was introducing himself was, I like Star Wars. I was like, so do I. And so we talk about it often. So yeah, those are, and obviously, D&D. Love D&D. Yeah, I enjoy the lore, just enjoy the experience, everything about it. We can get into that later.
I think for me also, D&D is a must. I never actually got into it until a couple of years ago. Never really thought much of it. And then as soon as I played the game, I was like, oh, yeah, this is for me.
I think we played around the same time when we started.
Yes, we did. Yes. Harry Potter For sure. I'm such a Harry Potter nerd. 100%. Read the books, grew up on the movies, like watch it like 3 times a year at least. Like it's so good. Manga, anime, like love it. Absolutely love it. Love the storylines. Just love it all.
When we were roommates, I remember you would always watch anime and be like, what are you watching right now? And I would try, and I'd get into it for a little bit. And I'm like, so how many episodes are there? I was like, that's a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I can get invested in this.
Yeah, it's a commitment sometimes.
It really
Sure.
is. Sometimes, I don't know, longevity is the name of the game when it comes to anime. It's always nice to find like little ones that are short ones that you're like, okay, watch this one if you want to try it out, test out the waters if you like it or not. But most of the really good ones are like several hundred episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So it is quite a commitment.
Yeah.
But
My dog is just kind of sniffing around. We're currently recording this in my living room at my house. So, yeah, so in case you hear anything like in the background, that's my dog. Like I always have like random like, oh, close your head, bud.
Honey. Sweet baby.
Sit down.
I heard that.
Maybe I should keep that on the pod. People be like, what was that big thunk? That was my dog just hitting his head on the edge of the table. So welcome to the segment of the episode where I will read off the top nerdy news of the week. All right, so the first news of the week, after decades of adventure, D&D is celebrating their 50th anniversary with a D&D documentary. So that's super exciting. So D&D documentary, I know he talked about it in a video, and I'll link it to the podcast so y'all can watch it since it's D&D related. But yeah, they're going to do a whole thing about the history of D&D, what that's going to look like, have guests who's just been impacted by D&D, and just really go through the whole, even the storyboard of how it ever began and just where it's gone through, like where it is now with the, Dungeons and Dragons movie. So 50 years.
50
That's
years.
insane. I remember, so when I worked at Starbucks, I worked with this one guy. His dad did a live stream Twitch of D&D, and I went over to his house. He has like basically a dungeon where he has it, but he has the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Like
Wow.
He's been playing it for that long, since it's been coming out. And so he's like, yeah, I've been playing since I've been 10. I think he's like in his 60s now. And so it's pretty crazy just to like see like basically, and look, I remember I opened it up and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like this is like what the OGs did.
Yeah. It's been really cool to see just how much over the years, and we'll talk about that later also on the pod, but just how far it's come since like, at least even since I first heard about D&D, no one really played it. And then I think Stranger Things really kind of brought it in to that play for all of like the young folks. And then
Absolutely.
it became mainstream, a lot of that,
they did that too.
Yeah.
because it introduced it to a whole new generation, which is great,
Breath of fresh air for sure.
Yeah, so that's that part of it. Another D&D news is that coming this spring, Minecraft's Dungeons and Dragons is going to be happening, and you can explore different iconic locations in the Forgotten Realms, like the Icewind Dale and Candlekeep and battling beholders, mimics, and more. And so that's going to be, officially coming soon. So they haven't released an official date as far as I saw, but it's going to be coming. Super exciting. I don't really play Minecraft at all, but this really intrigues me.
Yeah, it makes me want to play Minecraft. I never play Minecraft.
Yeah, I've tried it. Actually, Des, you and I have tried it, and we're like, let's play. And I'm
During lockdown.
we were roommates during that time, so a lot of exploring on Minecraft. I'm like, what is happening right now? Another one, Paramount Plus is officially announced a series order for Star Trek Starfleet Academy. So the show will kind of be just an all new class of the Starfleet cadets. So students, will be kind of just exploring everything like that and the legendary places in the galaxy. I don't know much about Star Trek. I know a little bit more, I feel like, because my dad went to Star Trek conventions growing up. So, which is like where I kind of get all my nerdy stuff come from. But he wasn't really a Star Wars like person growing up. So like I never really grew up with Star Wars. So Star Trek is kind of like, I guess, kind of what I grew up with a little bit more. But fun thing happening in Paramount Plus if you're a Star Trek fan. And then here's an interesting Marvel news. I don't know if you saw that Secret Invasion had a June release date that they announced it, right? But it vanished from Disney Plus and it's not there anymore. And so that's kind of, Nerdist did post this on their social media. I'm like, well, let me go double check it. And they're right. Like, I don't see it on my Disney Plus anymore. But they did release that June date of this year. But I'm curious of whether that had anything to do with, with Jonathan Majors, whether they're deciding to just like remove that date and figuring out if they need to push it or not.
Oh, that's a good point.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because they had posted, and I guess maybe it was something that was automatic that was already, it was around that day that one thing that had happened. So that date was announced. Everyone's excited about it. But yeah, it's not on Disney Plus anymore. But yeah, I thought that was interesting how it vanished. It's not there anymore. So don't know. Maybe by the time I'm posting this, it's back up and then you can completely ignore what I just said. So, all right. Well, that's all I have for nerdy news of the week. All right, guys, so we're back for Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves review. So first, what we'll do is we'll talk non-spoiler reviews for anyone who hasn't seen the movie yet. And if you're listening to this episode, the title is the review. I'm a little worried for you, but it's okay because you can just skip the rest of it, but you can hear the non-spoiler reviews first. So, all right, non-spoiler reviews. Go. I loved it.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you could see the different classes. You could almost identify the different classes. I enjoyed the fight scenes to actually see like the rolling of the die, actually seeing that happening.
Yeah.
I loved seeing, I'm not going to spoil what it was, but the Nat 1.
Yes.
Like you're just seeing, you're like, oh yeah, that is definitely a Nat 1 right there. Like it was not supposed to happen at all how he planned it. I loved seeing the flaws come out. So for those that may not know a lot about D&D, one of the things that you do when you create your characters is you're supposed to give them a flaw. So it could be something as simple as when I see gold, I want to steal it, or I'm going to choose myself when I do it. And so each character, you kind of see their flaw, but and you see that happen throughout it. And so it was really cool to see kind of their flaws come out. Such a overlooked, I think, part of D&D and creating your characters. I loved the character progression, the backstories. You literally see someone in the beginning, you see someone's backstory.
I think that's what I loved about it was seeing, when you play D&D, like a big part of it, especially if it's a one shot, or not one shot, but even just any campaign, you're learning about everyone's backstory and like seeing that play out every time a character was introduced, like here's their backstory. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what we would do in person if we're playing it.
It's so fun.
Yeah. I think the actors were just really well chosen. They did a really great job. I didn't really have any issues with anybody, but they are just all great in their own way. But they're all so different in their own way, which is like what makes really D&D, because their characters together, like it makes no sense why they should ever be a team. And like any team that ever comes together in D&D, like it's the most like odd bunch of people ever. You can have a dragonborn on one side, and just like a half elf on the other end. That's complete opposite, but in the same team working together. So that's what was really cool to see, just how the team even came together, how they worked together too.
Yeah, I liked seeing the recruitment aspect of it. You see kind of if you played a long-term campaign, you saw the different minor quests that you have to do to fulfill the bigger quests. They did a really good job of making you feel like I am watching a D&D campaign right now.
Yes.
Like I very much felt like I was watching, I just felt like I was watching a legit campaign.
Very immersive, especially with the fight scenes. You could see the progression.
Yes.
With like everything. Those were like my favorite thing.
Even locations, all locations is similar to what like is in the campaigns that the world that we grow up with and play with, and seeing it on the big screen was so cool. And
what's really good about that too, with them immersing like the cities and the towns and stuff that we're so used to, is that it brings it's a relatable in a way that people who haven't seen it or haven't played D&D at all, they're not lost in the story. It like brings them in, and so that they're able to enjoy it just as much as we are.
I think that was like one of the biggest wins, because our friends, we have a couple friends in our group who like they want nothing to do with D&D. Like, it's like, you guys can play. And most of us went to go watch the movie last night. When we told them, hey, come watch the movie, they're like, we don't know anything about D&D. I'm like, you don't have to know anything about D&D to watch this movie. Yeah, and they ended up coming out, and like, even my sister, who's like completely like not a D&D person at all, she's like, this actually was really good. And I was like, I know. And it was so good. Yeah. It was just a really well job, and hope they're going to be doing a sequel. Keep going. And there's so much to explore
there's no
too.
They don't.
No.
I mean, there's no way.
I mean, there's so many things you can do with it, obviously, because we play D&D.
And with the specific character that's in that we can talk about later, like in the laters, there's just an open-ended with that particular one, with their story.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think that's kind of also the beauty of D&D is because of this world that you have, you don't even necessarily need to follow the party again.
No.
Like, they could just
Let's
make
get in the whole other party.
Different party, which happens in D&D.
D&D universe.
You just do, literally, like, you just go out, you make a party, and I mean, I've made multiple characters that has happened in the Sword Coast, which is where it takes place. This movie does. And so I think I made multiple characters in that realm. And yet they are all different parties, and they all live in the same realm, or they could be different. You could do so much with D&D, so much.
Yeah. All right, so that's enough for our non-spoiler reviews. So we're gonna talk spoilers reviews in 3, 2, 1. All right,
Bradley Cooper. Can we just talk about that?
Little Bradley Cooper.
But Bradley Cooper is in the D&D universe.
It was so funny.
It's a small role, but very entertaining. Very entertaining. I mean, the Hobbiton of D&D.
Oh my gosh, man, that was so good. I just had to bring that up.
Man. Yes, like, it was so funny, and like
the dynamic between his character and Michelle Rodriguez, who plays Holga in it, is just hilarious to me.
Oh my god,
giant tall person.
So good.
It was just like, and I think they did a really great job of even starting off the film too. Starting off, with them in prison. Like, okay, so I laughed so hard when we see Jonathan come in.
Dude, so good.
And the whole time he's like, where's Jonathan? Where's Jonathan? Where's he coming in? And they push him out the window.
If you guys don't know, once you see the movie, Jonathan is basically a part bird, part
Yeah, and which is funny because Jord'n, you played a character like that in our last campaign that we did.
It was so much. The whole time I was thinking, Jord'n. What's Jord'n? He's being pushed out the window right now.
Totally side note. So when for listeners, okay, you could be in on the joke. So whenever we played that campaign, yeah, Jord'n, you're the bird. My character, not thinking at all, says, "Yeah, we could just kill 2 birds with 1 stone." He goes, "Excuse me."
I don't remember why you said that. I was like, you want to just kill birds?
Probably the single most funniest line I've ever had in our D&D campaigns. It was the look on your face too, the sincere like, excuse me? Like, you were so appalled.
And I was like, I'm so sorry.
And you're like, it's just a saying. I'm like, why would you have that as a saying? Like, that's a terrible saying.
Oh man,
that's so good. Yeah,
but anyways, that's what I thought of when Jonathan comes out, but he's like so proper too, and Jonathan, and when they push him out the window, I was like, no. But at the very, very end, you see that happen again, but they blocked it with bricks.
Oh man.
Yeah, so that was hilarious. I saw the movie last night, so I'm trying to recap everything that has happened.
So they escape, and then they head to the city of Neverwinter.
Neverwinter, seeing it on the big screen was so cool.
That was so
I was like, and even hearing them mention Waterdeep, and
in Baldur's Gate, seeing Underworld, that was so cool. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to get too far ahead.
You know what I was thinking while they were like mentioning all these worlds that we've been in is like, what if they're leaving that open for other adventure, other missions missions and things like that they're going to be going on. Like, this isn't just a one-off movie. You know what I mean? Like, some people do Easter eggs and hide them within the film intentionally like that. So
Absolutely.
I was thinking that the whole time.
Yeah.
So fun.
Chris Pine as a bard.
Perfect.
I wish he did use his bard skills more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciated the fact that how he was pretty much the voice of it. And I appreciate the fact how you could tell the different characteristics, and you can see like kind of like the attributes that they have, so charisma and whatnot, and you're like, oh yeah, he's the bard, so he has a very high charisma, and you can kind of just tell that throughout that. But I do kind of wish I saw a little bit of, I don't know, Eldritch Blast or some type of cantrip that bards can use, you know.
Overall, Chris Pine did really well, and just his whole story, like what you were saying about the weakness, you know, his weakness of grabbing the gold piece, that because if he didn't grab the gold piece, you know, his wife would be alive, kind of thing. I saw him eyeing it when they teased that part, and at the end, like seeing him grabbing him, like, okay. But Holga, the barbarian, great.
Perfect actor.
You can
for
see
that.
when she raged.
Yes. Oh, that was
man.
such a good one. When they start to take them to execute her, and he's just like doing this.
You got this. But you know why? It's because he keep rolling ones.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that.
That's what you think about in my head. I'm like, you know what?
Progression to the sword and still not being able to cut the rope.
Because it's like, oh, I gotta cut the rope. All right, roll. You know, whenever you roll the one, it's like, so you can't cut the rope. You're still there. You know. So that's what I thought when I saw the trailer. That's what I thought about.
Or when Justice Smith, who plays the
sorcerer,
yes,
yeah.
and he stepped on the bridge on accident, like the bridge, and it just goes.
Yeah. I think the first one that I noticed of a crit fail was when he tried to cast the one spell and he accidentally casted gravity. And it just like started to reverse it. I'm like, oh yeah, that is definitely a crit fail.
Even like whenever he's using like the lighter on his finger, like, oh, that's a cantrip. You know, like I think of those kind of spells.
Little prestidigitation, I think is what
that
that
one was. Really horrible rolls throughout.
Oh my gosh, man. Yeah.
He couldn't do anything.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. I think what's, obviously we see, Chris Pine's character, Egen.
I think that's how you pronounce it, yeah.
Egen. Obviously this whole thing, he's, the quest that they end up like getting together when they leave, they were parting, but they decided to still, go through that. And then meet with his, they met up with his daughter and all that. And
that was tough.
I was so frustrated with that whole situation because, obviously we see, his backstory with the Red Wizards and all that. Obviously we find out later that is a Red Wizard. That's with Hugh Grant's character trying to Forge. Yeah. The Rogue, apparently. That's Rogue. Forge.
Oh, he's a rogue. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
But we don't see much of that because we see the part where Forges are pretty much, Lord, of Neverwinter, them returning back to the palace and then finding out that he was like the Lord and everything like that, and seeing his daughter and completely, that whole scene. I was like, are you kidding me right now? What? But Hugh Grant as Forge.
Oh, he was great. Yeah, he's a really good villain. I thoroughly enjoyed kind of seeing almost the betrayal aspect of it because I think a good D&D campaign has some sort of betrayal.
Yeah.
In that.
That was very frustrating though when he was like, I really like having your daughter around. Like, she makes me feel good about myself.
Oh my gosh.
I think I'll keep.
When he was like, it's almost like a god. He's like, I'm a lord and a god. I'm doing pretty well. I was like, are you serious?
It's so
right
frustrating.
now?
It almost makes me think like when they were creating this character, he has so many flaws. There's like no positive.
Yeah, it was like a chaotic something. I'm trying to think of what he would be.
Not good.
I almost want to say he would say like
chaotic
neutral evil because he uses the law because he became a lord to do it, but he also likes the chaos of whatever. Like, I don't give a rip.
Or did he though?
That's also true.
Because did he use what's her name, the Daisy head who plays Sophina? Did he use her? I think they might have said that in the movie.
Yeah, I think she did. The Lord was under a spell, but he did say he's like, oh yeah, you're the riches that you used funded
he used
my campaign
money. Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe a neutral evil, maybe. Or chaotic. He's definitely not lawful.
It was very entertaining. Like, I was on the edge of my seat. I was frustrated in the right way that you should be with a character like that. And it just pulled you in and made you want to see, like, his end.
Yes.
Undeniably.
Very, very much so.
Oh, one of my favorite characters, and I, without a doubt, hands down, is Regé Jean Page, who plays Zinc Yendar. And that's the character who I said earlier in the non-spoilers, who I fully think that they're pulling that up for him to be the focal point of the second movie, because there's just too much unended open, like, questions with him, with his past, with Sophina and all of the red caped people that they have, and there's just too much unanswered with that.
Well, I like with that, because one thing that I did in my campaign is I introduced kind of this character that was a higher level than them, and he knew a lot more than everybody else in the campaign. And so I feel like that was kind of him, like the DM playable character, DMPC. And so that was kind of his role in that. But you can also make it so, like, what I did is I introduced this character as a higher level, but when they get done with the campaign, they will be the same level as him. And so maybe that's something they're going to do, is like they get stronger, because I mean, they do level up in this world, or could. Yeah, so I'm curious what they will do, if he's going to be like a recurring, like, mentor to these people.
I'm very curious to see, like, what his storyline's going to be, just because like when he did
we don't know much about it.
When he did his back history of, like, him as a kid and, like, all that stuff happening, and you see his eyes flash red, and you see him get that tattoo on his head like all the other people, but he didn't turn into an undead zombie. Right. It kind of makes you question whether or not his intentions truly are good, or if he has, like, an like, underlining, like, neutral, evil, chaos, you know what I mean?
Because he is a paladin. They did bring that up. And so it does make you question, like, okay, where is your deity allegiance at? Yeah. You know, because I don't think they specified that.
And I almost half expected him to come back at the end whenever, you know, the Red Wizard started to take power. I mean, I wonder, because, you know, I'm sure he has some, obviously, he was there when that first happened. I was expecting him to come back, but he didn't. But, let's rewind a little bit. So, you know, for plot purposes, so we see Simon, you know, as the sorcerer, doing his tricks and everything like that. And then they kind of recruit him, and they're looking for a druid. The druid, phenomenal.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But even getting to see, like, going into her world, I think that was so cool to see, like, their version of their tavern. They're always back at the tavern, always. And I'm like, yes, they're always bringing it back there.
Yeah.
Yes. And, but seeing her as the horse and then to the owl bear, and then I was like, man, just her shape shifting was phenomenal. They asked her to, you know, be a part of the team and to go back into, you know, Neverwinter, just to find out about the vault, you know, like what was going on there. And then Holga's like, can you turn into a deer? And then she does. But can we please talk about that freaky moment when the Red Wizard saw her as a fly?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that
was such a good one. That was such a good one.
Oh, when she just looked at it. Oh, my gosh.
And the screech that came from her mouth just was like, what?
That was insane.
But seeing her transform and escaping, that was so cool. That was very cool. Really cool.
And realistic, too.
Yeah, to see all the different transformations, seeing, like, the different almost stealth rolls that you see, especially, like, when she hid inside the armor and then she tried to sneak away, and then it's like, roll for stealth, and it's like, oh yeah, you did, and it's like, oh wait, no, actually you didn't do as good of the roll as you thought.
Yeah,
that was
the
really
Red Wizard saw you.
Yeah, right. That whole chase scene was so well done. Seeing all the different ways that you can, I don't know, escape. It gave me creative ways of seeing, like, okay, how would I do that? How would I try to? I don't know. It was very, very well done.
Very well done. I loved the moments where she's like, also during the chase, she's almost in a panic because it's like in a hurry. It's like roll. It was very good, very realistic. I fully enjoyed that scene. It kept me on the edge of my seat.
I'm trying to think of anything else that happened right after that. So we had
a pub to figure out a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Right after
they found out that they needed the helmet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Simon was like, yo, there's no way I can do this.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. That was good, like back and forth with the characters.
Yeah.
In the aspect that two characters are having this conversation, it's like, oh, let's keep this away from the party.
Yeah.
Like, let's not share this.
Eden.
That was very, very well done.
Let's keep it away from the party for the morale. It's like, how is that going to end successful if he does not know how to do the helmet at all?
That was also a really interesting take on attunement, or yeah, I think that's what he did. Because I always think just like, oh yeah, you just do it for an hour and then you're good. Instead, it's like, oh no, you may not be able to attune to certain things. Yeah. Like I've just never done that before.
But I mean, how were they able to find it?
That's right. Yeah. So they
with
go
all the different like undead people.
Yes, that was so funny.
That was hilarious.
And then the last guy was like,
and they left it. They left him.
I love how they had to. That was probably one of my favorite parts because the first guy that they asked, he's like, right, and then just like it's done. It's like, oh, how many times they had to do that in order to find,
so many
paladin.
Okay. The dragon when they went down.
Oh, that was so funny. I love the exchange was like, he must have found a new den, and they were like, did he eat the other one?
So funny.
It's so funny because they did such a great job of hiding that from the trailers. Because you really couldn't tell from the trailers. And then when that moment happened, I was like, stop it right now. Like, I died.
That fight scene, favorite.
Oh, yeah.
That
was
one.
a good.
But, like, when he first, fights all, like, the guys on the wizards on his own. He's like, well, they're only going to be dead for so long because they're undead. I was like, oh, they're undead. Did not catch that.
It's like you kind of forget about that because the backstory with them at the beginning, and you kind of were just like, oh, they're just a little pale, a little blue.
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
But yeah, so obviously they get the helmet, and when we see Simon go through all that, as we talked about earlier, all this turmoil and stuff like that. And then afterwards back, they go through, well, I think it was, okay, the scene when they find, I forgot the name of the stick that transports of the different portals. But man, that scene of them placing it into the carriage, my sister and I looked back at each other like, that was amazing. Like, that was so good.
That was an 18 at least on a roll. That was a smart.
Yeah.
That was a
shoot. I mean, that was just phenomenal. But it's funny because Simon, lost his footing there. I was like, he did not roll well there.
Yeah.
But and then when they get back to like the inn and they're above room, but it's fallen to the ground and it's just cement, that obviously them going through all that and the games.
The games
that
were
was
fun.
so
yeah,
fun.
That was very, very fun to watch.
I was just so impressed by, well, not impressed, happy of that how many monsters that they actually got to use.
Right.
They made sure to like be able to see everything. Even I have a list of all the monsters that were there. So let's see. Obviously, we see the gelatinous cube. We got to see a black dragon. That's not there that was at the beginning. The black dragon.
Yes.
The displacer beast was the one with that looked like the tiger with the that guy.
The little illusion spell
that was
tricked
cool.
everyone. That was really cool.
That
was
was
very
so
cool to watch.
Oh, we also this is like backtrack back at the dungeon, the intellect devourers.
Oh, that was so funny when it was like the higher the intellect, the more chance of
they just run past them.
Right past them.
But I think my favorite one that I saw was the mimic. Seeing that.
Oh man.
Because I don't know how many times I've played a campaign and there's always a mimic somewhere, or at least even as a DM, I know I've always placed like for level ones, or at the beginning, like I'll place a mimic somewhere like in a house. But man, seeing that, I was like, oh, that's phenomenal.
I think they did a good job of keeping it not as linear, you know, like especially in the planning.
Yes.
Right. Because sometimes that's, especially as someone that has played as a DM, sometimes you do things. Like my first session ever DMing, they did absolutely nothing that I had planned. Absolutely nothing. I planned this crazy thing, this crazy intro, and they didn't do any of it. And so sometimes DMing is just like you just going with it. And sometimes your characters, which I feel like could have happened they did well.
That's what that happened. That's
literally
that
what
scene.
happened was just like, oh, I'm going to go inside this gelatinous cube and like, let's go down. And you're just like, okay, let's figure this out.
What's underneath,
Those are some of the best things. I will say this, and all the movies that I've watched like over my lifetime, they're kind of predictable in a way when you watch them, because you can figure out, oh, that's automatically the bad guy. This is automatically going to happen, A, B, and C, yada, yada, yada. But with this movie, I thoroughly was on the edge of my seat the entire time and enjoyed every minute of it.
Like,
and I think that's the best part of D&D.
I loved it. And man, and even afterwards, the whole plan of Forge was taking all of their money, and putting it onto the ship. And later on, they're planning to leave, and they see like basically the Red Wizard starting to like do her thing. Yeah. And they're like, we gotta turn back. It's like them completely turning around.
They abandoned the ship with all the gold in it, and they,
use the teleportation thing. Well, because they made a promise to the Paladin, we're gonna return it back to everybody.
Was the best. But like just that scene where you see Hugh Grant's character Forge like talking to this person at the dock, and he's like, I need to find my ship, and like right behind him it's just slowly crashing into another one.
So funny.
But yeah, and even the fight scene with that moment whenever the Red Wizard and the whole team, I can't remember the Red Wizard's name. Sophina. Whenever the whole team is fighting her at the same time, I'm like, that one scene in a campaign will take like 45 minutes to do that whole.
Easily.
Yes.
But I was watching them like, this is exactly what is happening.
Because everyone's doing these crazy different things that makes like it's different spells and everything like that. And I'm like, that's exactly what because when we're going through like a fight scene, like it feels like it's taking ages, but in reality it was probably like not even like 5 minutes, or 10 minutes. But seeing that on screen, that's what I thought of, like, that's actually a lot longer when we play.
Also, like the fact of seeing Edgin go behind the wizard and smack her with the loot. Sneak attack. I'm like, yes! Like, not really, because he isn't a rogue, but it was still just funny, like, seeing that surprise. That was funny.
That was great. I love how they incorporated Simon's character in it, where he was able to, like, just enhance his powers and be able to...
Yeah, with the helmet.
Yes.
When he got originally into the tomb, that wasn't the tomb.
Yeah.
Or the tomb, not the...
The fake vault.
The vault, yes. But the end of the fight scene, best ending of a fight scene, man. The owlbear strangling. Yeah. It went whole, because it reminded me of.
It went straight up. It was interesting to see that, because when Kira, Edgin's daughter, goes and puts it on there, you see her start to decay, but you think she's decaying. The entire time I'm thinking like she's decaying because she's showing her true form. In reality, she just lost her magic. So she's losing it. And I'm like, this is so well done. Like, I did not expect at all that is how they would beat her.
Literally, she when she was done, and then just kept going.
She just barely moves and just starts smacking and throws her against the wall.
Our theater was hype, man. They were clapping, they were laughing, they were crying, But I was like, oh. But I think what was so touching, like you get all of that, and even we see Holga, being stabbed at the end, and them using the resurrecting stone.
The only one that they had too.
Because he realized that Holga's really the mom. Yeah. She's the one who raised her, and he realizes that, like, no, this is his, essentially her mom. Like, this is the woman that raised her. I'm going to raise her, use it on her. And oh man, I looked over at our friends, and our friend Haley, she's just tears. I just called you out, Haley. If you ever read this, listen to this, man. That was so emotional. And I think it was really cool to see that.
It was a bittersweet moment, but I mean, understandably so, because I mean, it's essentially her mom / aunt / godmother / that's all she's known. I mean, she doesn't remember her birth mom. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool when he was Edgin was talking to Sophina in his daughter's form. And what he said was, I was trying to bring back my wife, not your mom.
Yeah.
Like, that was really, really cool. And to see that callback of what Mary already brought up was, he did end up deciding, okay, I'm going to bring back his mom. He just thought it was someone else in those moments.
But yeah, and at the end, pretty much we see them kind of gather, and they're good, and we see Paladin, basically approach Forge as well, and Forge is back in the same prison that we started at the very beginning, and then Forge at the end, obviously, going back and trying to do the same thing to Jonathan. So
telling his story. It all started with my mother and throwing Jonathan. And every single time that lady on the council was like, Jonathan!
Also love when it failed. He's like, I don't know what came over me. I just did it.
It just happened.
It just happened.
But yeah, so overall, man, that was so great.
Mm-hmm.
Question. What was y'all's favorite scene?
Shooting from the hip, currently, right now, I would say the scene where they're all fighting Sophina all at once, and seeing that and seeing like, oh, this is definitely all the combat that I have done in D&D campaigns before.
Yeah, I would say the fight scenes are probably my favorite. Favorite comedy scene though was when Edgen glitches.
Oh my gosh!
I laughed so hard. I snorted in the theater. It was hilarious.
It was great.
I love the actual Edgen telling Simon, I think is his name, being like, concentrate, you need to concentrate. And I'm like, yes, a concentration spell.
Yeah.
It's like, my foot's stuck. I will get unstuck.
Oh, that was so good.
It was great.
Yeah, my favorite part, I think, is them. My brain is literally not remembering the place where they had to get the helmet and that. What did he call it? What
Underdark or Underworld.
Anyway, I just really loved being down there. I think it was so funny.
Yeah.
A lot of D&D too, which I think a lot of people will love if they've never been immersed in that world or anything like that before, is that it gives a lot of Hobbit, Lord of the Ring vibes, especially with like the traveling and the underground that we went into, and just so reminiscent of Mordor and like all these different places. It gives the same vibe. So I think those of you who haven't played D&D, who don't know anything about it, you'll thoroughly enjoy this movie.
Yeah. So that's kind of like all the time we really have. You know, we're almost coming up to an hour for this, but if y'all we can do kind of a part 2 and talk more into D&D in general, the game of like as a Christian and like playing it and things like that. But this will be the end of this episode, but listeners will have to wait a whole other week, and we can talk about part 2 of D&D. But for anyone listening right now, is there anything that y'all wanted to share? I don't know if y'all have like public socials where people to follow you, or something you want people to know.
I don't know. My name is spelt weird, so it's JORD''N Bay, BAY. So if you want to, I'm sure you can just search that up. There's not many Jord'n A's, or people that spell it my way. So yeah, I'm sure you can just look me up on anything.
My name is spelt very different. Dezerae, Manier, Manier. You can look me up anywhere. It's basically the same.
Yeah. She's also starting her own Etsy page.
I am. Yeah. Love it.
I forgot the name of your Etsy page. If you want to shout out on it, it's not live yet, but it will be live. So just be looking for it.
Yeah. It's Desi's Digitals. Yeah. So basically, I'm making templates and things like that for real estate agents and pretty much anyone who's in business in those industries for promoting anything that they have. So whether it be selling a home, coming soon, closing, any kind of informational packages that they want to have with that, I'm going to be creating bundle packages for sale for those things, because it's time consuming. They don't have the time, nor should they have to put in a lot of that effort. So, I mean, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I make it easy. Yeah. I have a real estate family I'm married into. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
There you go. Yeah, so go check it out. You can follow her on socials, and whenever that goes live, I'll post it on our social media, and y'all can check it out if you have any real estate friends who are looking for some templates. So cool. Until next week, but for us, it'll be just a few more minutes, a few minutes, and we'll continue talking about it. We'll see y'all next week on the podcast. So thanks for listening, y'all.
Yay.
See you next week. Bye.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Nerds and Jesus podcast. This podcast is produced, edited, created, and hosted by me, Mary Howell. I also run our social media and Patreon page and also did our art. The music is by John Bjork. If you're looking for a way to get connected into the Nerds and Jesus podcast community, you can follow us on social media at Nerds and Jesus. Also join our Facebook group. For more bonus content, physical merch, and so much more, you can visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/nerdsandjesus. You can also become a producer level patron as the Supreme Nerd, where you will get your name read at the end of each episode as well. If you would like to continue to support the show, you can share this podcast word of mouth with everyone you know. You can also review and rate our episode wherever you get your podcasts. Anything helps, and thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Praying each of y'all have an amazing week.